Okay, welcome. This is Jennifer at Workamajig, and I see there's about 12 attendants so far, which is great. There's not always a huge draw of people to this Workamajig webinar because not many people have the interest in allowing their clients or their vendors to use our system. So I'm glad you guys are here. And this, as you can see, is the agenda we'll be going over today. My name is Jennifer Broadwater. I've been with Workamajig for about 4 years. And as we go through this, you can ask questions at any time, but I will try to go over everything and have questions near the end. And then when I was just sitting here thinking about all the stuff I wanted to go over today, then I also wanted to, at the end, tell you, if this isn't right, for you at your company, then I'm also going to give you some alternatives to using the portal for kind of giving information to your clients without actually having a sign-in. So I'm going to get started. I have a bunch of different browsers open so I can show you different things today. And this is being recorded, and you'll be able to receive the recording in our help guide in about a week. And in addition to that, I do want to first take you guys, let's see, where do I like to go? We're always supposed to do this in case you guys don't know. And this is probably where y'all got in anyways. So on our support guide, you will note that we have a place for webinars. So support.workamajig.com, webinars, that's where you go for the future ones. If you want to sign up or if you want to view any of the older ones. So I did want to let you know that first. Also, questions after this call that we maybe not get to or today, you can also go to support@workamajig.com and you would be able to write to whoever your support person may be, which may be me. For some of you guys, I can see on here. So welcome all of you. All right. So before I get started with showing you pages and how to do this, I kind of just want to talk a couple of minutes about why is there a client or portal vendor? And they are basically the same, but typically set up a little bit differently because you want them to have a little bit different access. And when I say vendor, I mean like your contracted employees that you're not actually paying for a license. Now, of course, vendors, you can pay for a license and they can sign in just like you. And then they can be full active users inside of Workamajig. But we also gave the opportunity for vendors, contractors, to just have a free sign in to complete tasks and do stuff on projects without actually having to pay for them through Workamajig. The big difference when you have a vendor portal versus an actual user is they cannot add time to a system like you guys all know. We're all big about time, right? All you can do, they're treated more as an expense on a project when they are a free user because they would be giving you a vendor invoice later for that time. But it's up to you how you want to use them, if you need this or not. And then the clients, of course, you have the opportunity to give your clients information without them entering into Workamajig. But this presentation is to show, hey, they could, if you have a few clients that are like really, computer savvy and they want to be in and see all the stuff and do it themselves, great. And then I understand there's a lot of clients that want their hand held and they want you to call them up on the phone or have a Zoom meeting or see them in person. That's cool too, either way. But this is just giving you guys kind of an idea of the opportunities that you have inside of Workamajig to use it to its fullest abilities. So that's the why. All right, so the first thing we're going to get started with is security rights. So when we're going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about it in two halves, client versus vendor today. Let's see, I have so many browsers, like what to remember which one I went to. All right, so first of all, you guys are seeing my Workamajig. And when we start talking about how do I set up for my vendor or client to be able to use Workamajig, there's obviously always going to be some back-end setup, and that's going to be in your admin manager in your system setup. Before the first part of this, obviously, I'm going to back up one step. we're talking about in your billing, we're talking about your actual clients. And today I'll be really concentrating on this client called Purgatory, and we're going to be talking about the contact inside them. So when we talk about who's getting access, it's inside your client, you have contacts, and any one of these contacts could be accessing Workamajig if you set it up. And that's what we're going to go through. So your contacts are the people, or on the vendor side, they're also contacts. I get to them from the salesperson, the one I set up for today. I just have the contacts, and we're going to be looking at my contracted employee of Bart Simpson. All right, so that's where the first thing comes in, like, and there's a separation of what you want them to see. So we're going back now to admin manager, system setup. And if you guys have all been trained, or at least you've been trained by me, then you'll note that the security settings is always a place where we make a lot of changes. So you will have your own security groups. They might look like this, they might not, there might be a couple, there might be 1,000, it doesn't matter. What you need to know is when we set people up today, I'm concentrating on my clients and my vendors. And as you go through here, it automatically defaults to the full user right side, which we're not going to talk about, because this is what the kind of rights your clients would have if they were full users. And there's tons of things that they can have access to if they were full users and you were paying for them. But today we're talking about the free user side. So we're going to toggle on over to the client right side. And this is a much shorter list of things that they can do. So their rights are their client rights, and you've got to look through here and decide, well, what do I want them to do? Maybe they should see all projects for the client, or do they you just want them to have access to the projects that they're on, not all projects? Because if there's like a huge company, let's just say the company was Coca-Cola, do they need to access all the projects or just the ones they're on? So this is kind of one of those things, well, maybe not. Like, you know, you're going to go through here. I'm just going to go through a couple of these. Some of them are obvious, like should they be able to view the calendar? This is sometimes helpful because you may see meetings on that. A lot of my clients do not use project requests. So, you know, maybe they don't even need to do this as a client, but I'm going to show you what that is also. We're not going to deep dive into anything about project requests today. That's a totally another webinar, but these are to do with them right here. Should they be able to edit project requests, even if they did this part? You might not want them to be able to do that. So these are just kind of like, what do you want them to be able to see as a right? And these are not all the things there's a whole nother page that we're going to go to that of things that they can do and see, but these are just some of the options. So for clients, we're looking at this side, and then with vendors, they also have the exact same things, but maybe your vendors don't need to, like, maybe they're not involved in the project request portion if you were using that, you know, they may have different rights, and they are separated, and you put people, whichever contact is, into the right group later. So you can decide what they want on here. So that's really the only two things. You should probably have them separated. A few people have them grouped into the same thing, and they say, oh, our clients and vendors can be in the same group. I prefer them to be separated, just because I do think that there's probably a higher level of visibility for the vendors to do different things. Well, actually, not in this case, but vendors on another page get access to more things in a project than maybe a client needs to see or do, because your vendors need to be more involved in projects. So that's the best back end of the security settings. All right, where are we? Questions so far? It's pretty self-explanatory. So we're in this area. Now, right above that is the only thing I need to talk about really quick, as a transaction preference. So when we set up this portal for your clients, there's a transaction preference called clients, and you can decide in their portal what is the default security group, and do they need a message in there when they open up their portal? What's the title of the portal, which I'm just going to, you know, I could just have this client portal, but I added vendor in there too, just because of this call. And like, you know, what were my project, like my client, these things really aren't to do with today's call, but there's other things in here that you could think. I'm just really want to talk about the portal right here. So you can have a big message for them to sign in and make them feel happy, or short. And you can also, this is a newer function, restrict who is emailed on a client created conversation. So if you need to be really conscientious of who people are emailed, you could check this box to just make some more extra restrictions on there. All right. So those are the only two backend things. So we've already covered this, this, and this. So now we're going to go into how do we set up these individuals? And then I'm going to show you what they look like from both sides. So let me go back to this page, Safari. All right. Go back over here. All right, so we're talking again about the different ways that we can set up. I'm going to do one. I'm going to do the contact for Bart Simpson first. So he's a vendor. So we're talking about the vendor. So vendors are usually attached to a company, and he is attached to this company called, Anthem Potatoes or whatever. Sometimes the vendor is the vendor, and like the name of the company is also the name of the person. That's okay too. Mine isn't. But what we're talking about here is how to set up his portal. This guy's been around working on projects, 57 projects for quite some time. In your database, you may have a, it's at any point. You don't have to do this when they're brand new. You can change this over at any time. So the first thing to note is we're going to go into the setup of it. So that's in the contact settings area. I've already set this guy up. But I want to go over the portions of this. So this particular guy, not the company itself, had 57 projects, but this guy, when you open the actual person, your vendor, it will tell you how many projects is he specifically on if he's given expense reports. Remember I said earlier that, he might have his own vendor invoices or expense reports, depending on how he's set up, or timesheets. But what I want to talk about first is the security control. So just like you're setting up an employee, and I'm sure you guys all know how to set up an employee, they need to have a user ID, which would be their personal work email or their whatever email you want to put in there, something that's unique. That's going to be their user ID. Then at the very first time you set them up, you're going to set a password up through here, and then usually click change on next, so they could set up their own password. Then the most important part is, hey, Bart, as I said, was a vendor or a freelancer. So remember that I were concentrating on only this one today, and then I'm putting this guy in the vendor one. So he's in this group already, and he has this box checked. Don't uncheck it unless you want to start paying for him. So if I uncheck this, you're going to get a whole bunch more options, which we won't be talking about today. Then he'd be the contracted employee that could add time to the system and have timesheets and all that jazz. Not need that. Today, we just want him to be free. Yes, free. All right. So, and he wouldn't be able to be administrator or anything like that. So just note, username is whatever their email is. Security group should be something to do with the vendors, and then hit save. So you set that guy up. Now he can get into our system. There's going to be some options on here, just like in employee records, where they can be automatically subscribed to stuff, which may drive them crazy, like too much, like every conversation that they're on if they're in a project and you have them subscribe to the project conversations, they're going to start getting, unless it was marked private by you guys, they're starting to get all this project conversations back and forth. When I would say like 90% of those conversations just need to be maybe only, well, maybe not 90, but maybe 50% of those conversations he doesn't need to be a part of, but maybe he does need to be part of some. So just be careful if you subscribe them to these things, because the vendor will start getting, your contracted employee or vendor will start getting a lot of messages if you subscribe to this. It's okay if you do. They'll let you know if it's too much, I'm sure. And then typically, sometimes the vendor is your creative that is working on the project. So sometimes you do want them to be notified of updates on the deliverables that they're creating. So you might check this, you might not. They're usually not the reviewer. Like in most cases, the vendor is the person that makes it. So they're not the one reviewing your deliverable, but you could make him a reviewer if you'd like to here. So that's why that's not checked for mine, because that doesn't quite make sense to me. Typically, in the old days, we could do some sync. Skip this for now, because right now it's a totally different system for how we're syncing in stuff. Notifications, though, just like employees have notifications, you can send notifications to your vendors. So maybe they need, and when you click on these, some people just think automatically, oh, if I do this, they get them all. No, there's going to be, once you say, I want to send a notification, then you have some additional questions like, do you need to, like, if I pick this, he would be overwhelmed with all projects. But as long as he only gets changes in project status for ones that he's assigned to, that's fine. Like, just decide, note that most all of these have extra things once you open them, and then you decide when you click this, it automatically will say, well, what kind of notifications? Only ones this would probably be inappropriate for a vendor, but he's probably not the project manager if he's the vendor. But you can scroll through these and see task reminders. This is kind of important. I probably would I probably would give them a task reminder. So if your vendor is getting close to a project due date, you can decide in here, again, which kind of notification, how soon do you want to start giving them? So these are pretty easy. I don't have to really explain them. You're just going to go through here and decide, does he need to get these notifications? These will go into an email, most likely. Or you guys also have the ability for them to get it in their bell if they're going to sign in. But a lot of times vendors aren't always signing in to our portal. So it's good to have it both ways, where in the back end, you can say, yes, I want to get an email and I want to get it in my bell, because if I happen to be working Workamajig, it'll be right here, but I also like to get an email. So that's kind of another transaction preference in the back end for notification options. All right. So that's just the beginning of this. I don't know what I touched on there, but I'm not going to save it. From here, we were right here in contact settings. That's where we were setting up. System settings, it's just like if I need to exclude the vendor freelance and like from these certain things, I can. I'm not going to do that today, but you can. That's what I want to let you know it's in here. Not super important right now, but you could do some exclusions if you need to. So we're there. Now, this is the important part. This is where we make all the decisions. So the preview of the client portal, this is what the guy already set up. Portal is going to look like, and I'm going to show it in a different way, but this is the important part, the settings. So inside this little area, I have little pens, meaning I could have a company default, and I'm going to go down to my vendors, and I'm deciding what Bart Simpson can see because he's in this group. And there's going to be, and I'm overriding the company settings because I want his restrictions to be different than these other people's restrictions, right? So the first thing to note is you should do this. If you're going to go to the trouble of setting this up, you probably want to have separate restrictions based on the security group itself. Okay, so over on the side, you have some, how do I want to sort it on his page? But basically, like, what do you want this guy to see? What do you want him to see? Well, obviously, you'd want him to see the schedule, I would think, but maybe not. But you have, do you want him to see the specs that he needs to be working on? Probably, does he need to see deliverables and files? Now, estimates, maybe not. Like, why does he need to be involved if he's a vendor in the estimates? This is all up to you guys. I just put these on here based on what I've seen other vendors need to see in the past, and what would be applicable. Like, well, let's not overwhelm our vendor with having him see 10,000 things if he doesn't need to, which this guy probably has more than he needs to. Do you want your vendors to be able to start new conversations inside of Workamajig, or do you want them to just show the conversations? If they need to start making conversations with you, project managers, AEs, clients, then you will need to allow them to do this. Allow the clients to complete assigned tasks. It should really say vendor. So this is important. It's client/vendor, that when I show you their portal, there's a little button that says complete, I think, and they can check it when they're done with their assignment. So I would probably allow this. I'd probably let them see, the project team. That's not going to hurt them. This kind of iffy. Usually, this is a good thing that a lot of clients are starting to use is to-dos. So you have a task and then you have a to-do. You can allow the free users to complete a to-do as long as this is going to sound weird, as long as it's not assigned to them and it's left blank, they can complete the to-do. It's kind of odd, but you could actually do this, and hopefully I can demonstrate this later because I think I have set up one so you could see what that looks like. Project status, that's like, am I in production? Am I in, do they need to see that? I don't know. Project views, this gives a listing screen. If you guys don't remember what project views are, it's through your here, and then your views, like, do I need them to see a listing screen of all projects? Like, would they ever have the need to see, here's all the projects in the system? I mean, that typically, and I mean, that's only for their company though. Like, it's up to you guys on that one. Go back one. And then do comments, like if they want to see what to do, and if there's comments, and so these are just items that you can choose but don't have to. Like for a vendor, do they need to see the budget of the project? Is this important to the vendor that's working on this? It's very important to the client, I would think, but maybe not for the vendor so much. So again, I could take that off and save. And then again, you guys may be using campaigns. Now, campaigns are usually used by project managers or AEs to look at things as a whole with a bunch of projects in there. Is it necessary for the vendor? He's the guy working on the art for it. Does he care that it's in a campaign? Probably not. So, does he need to see maybe the files though that somebody added to a campaign? Maybe. These are kind of just things like campaigns. I typically wouldn't say they need much access to campaigns, because at their level, that's not necessary. It's like putting a creative into the campaigns. All right. So, and then anything that says views, and usually the vendors are not the ones that are doing project requests and need anything to do with project requests. They're not the ones making the clients are making that. So this is typically not checked, and they typically don't need to know about the invoices for, because this is more pertaining to your client invoice, not typically for them. So again, lots of options for you guys to go through. When you set it up once, anybody you dump in that. So if you have 5 vendors and then you have them all in this security group, you don't have to do this 5 times. It's already there once you do it. Once you adjust it for one vendor, it's adjusted for all the vendors, right? All right. So I don't know what I touched. I'm not sure in there. What else is in here? So clients, oh, that's not the right one. Sorry, one back. So we've gone over, we can see their client portal. After you make some changes, it's not always immediate that you can see, like when I go to this page, if I've made a change on there, it's not always immediate. I can see this. Sometimes it takes a few minutes to update, but generally speaking, what you're seeing here is what they're seeing. And I'm going to take you in a different way to see that also. That's cleaner, because sometimes it's like muddied up in the, anyways. All right. So, and then he has an avatar, and you can remove it or change his avatar for him if you want to. How did this avatar get here? I put it in. So just note, anybody in here, you have like the ability to like change the images and stuff that are in for their portal. If you want to, you don't have to. And then in the contact information, just to go back to this, if you need to update your vendor's information, that's just from the contact information in here. Oh, a question. Gail Tockstein. So it would be better to create a new security group if I have a vendor that needs, yes, a specific permissions. If your vendor needs higher access, then yes, do not just make one group for your vendors if they have need. And that's such a good question. I'm actually going to, if you guys don't already know how to do this, I'm going to hop back out before I go into the clients. If you decide that your vendor needs a different setup, then like most of your vendors are just in here, but you need a separate one because one vendor needs more access than all the rest. All you have to do is see this, click on the line till it kind of highlights. Then you click this little button here and it says, do you want to copy this group? And then right below it will be the copy group. Once you click on that, then I would come over here and be like, vendor Al, whoever it was. So then he might need his own group, and that will change it over here. Then when you go back to his vendor, then you just need to drop him into this group, and then you can start changing his rights. They defaulted to whatever this one was. Then you can come in and be like, oh yeah, he needs this, 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 and this, right? So pretty easy to do on there. And answer live. All right, done. Sorry, clear you out? It was a good question. Because yes, there's going to be particular cases where one vendor may need different rates than the other. So thank you for asking that, actually. All right, so the same thing, I'm just going to go back through where I told you before we're going to work on this ski patrol girl and just kind of give a brief of this for the setup. So that's under your client. So you're going to find the client and you're like, you can tell I like skiing. So the contacts inside here is what you would set up. Like there could be one, there could be two, there could be 100, doesn't matter. So the contact that we're setting up on this one. So now we're looking at, what does my client need access to? Does he need access to the same exact things? You're going to need to come to the more key. You're going to need to come to the contact settings first, which I already did. You're going to come over to the security control. You're going to give him a user ID, which is his email, right? You're going to put them in the security group for whatever one. And again, these could also be broken up. It could just say clients, and or you could have special ones for different clients needing different access. And it's kind of up to you how this is done. But this is exactly the same as that we did on the vendor one. Projects and time, does he need to see all the project conversations? Subscribing to stuff, sometimes can be bothersome when they get too many emails and you're just like, this has nothing to do, the client doesn't need to see every detail. So most of the time use these in sparingly in there. And again, notifications. Does your client really need to get all of these notifications? Absolutely not. He might just need to see if it was over budget or something like that, or if the project chat status changes. It might be nice for him to get a notification when the project goes into complete phase, then he knows it's about done, right? Without you having to reach out, which I will talk about how you can reach out to them about project statuses in another way without going through all this in the future. But when we get done with this and we decide that, blah, 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 then again, they have their own client portal and you have the settings just like in the other one. But you got to make sure that you go down to the right one, because I do this all the time. I start changing things, just totally normal. You leave it on company default and you start messing with all these and you realize you weren't in the right one. So just make sure you go to the right one first and then start messing with what options you want them to have or not have. So that's again, oops, sorry, I just hit something that hopefully that was, okay, let me turn that back up. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. All right, so overriding and putting it into the specific group. So before I go in, I'm just going to show what things can they do to kind of give you guys an idea. So your client signs in or your vendor signs in, and instead of looking at it like this, I'm going to go in as actual them, each one of them, because I have them in different areas. So I think we're going to work with, is this the one? Yeah. Okay, so your vendor, Bart Simpson, signs in to app 22 or whatever app you guys are on, just like however you would sign in. He has the username and the password, and he signs in and he gets to this page. Okay, so I set this up so that he could have views of different things, and he may be assigned as a vendor to, like I said, most of the time vendors aren't the ones that are approving deliverables. They're usually the ones uploading the deliverables, right? But he could have items that he needs to approve, and just like he would get this in his email, what things he needs to do. Ignore the vendor invoice, would most likely be deliverables. He may do project requests. Usually a vendor is not doing a project request, so actually typically this section would not be here either. But I just put it on there just so you guys can see. But the deliverables to review will be on the left side, or he can get through the pen. They're both going to take them to the same page. How do we assign a vendor to a specific project? What a great question. Thank you, Gail. How do we get this vendor on a specific project? I'm going to go right back to that. I'm going to stop this for 1 second. Sorry. And I'm going to go over to how do we get them on a specific project? You're like, yeah, I did all that, but how do we actually do that? That's a really good question. I should not assume you guys know how to do these things. All right, so I want my vendor to be on a project. Wait for it. I think I put I already put this guy on. So you go to your project. And now when you go to the team, well, first of all, in the project settings, you do have to have access to say who is the primary contact. So the primary contact is, remember I said, well, in my case, it can be an internal employee, but it's usually a client contact. So Ski Patrol Girl has already been entered as the client contact. So you would pull it down and add it to them to the project as the contact. But then to actually add them to the team so that you can actually assign them to do something, that's a really good question. You would come over to the team tab, and let me take Ski Patrol Girl off so I can show you how that does. Oh, I can't because I already assigned them. Okay, you would come over to the project team and you would go to the client contact. I have another one called Martha Stewart, and I can say, oh, Martha Stewart needs to be. So you have this little area here where it's your staff, your contacts, the client contacts, and then you add them to the team. I already added her to the team. So once you add them to the team, you have then the ability to actually add them to a job. I'm so glad you asked that because I almost forgot to skip over this. So then typically you have a schedule, right? And you want your vendor to be assigned to something in the schedule, but you will not be able to add, like you could put assigned hours on here, but they'll not show hours. Remember, free users can't actually have actual hours, which nobody has actual hours on here, but they can't actually enter time. But where is Ski Patrol? Right there. So I decided this vendor needed to be responsible for the deliverable. So I added Ski Patrol person in here and I gave them a service to do that on here. So this is, I'm going to show you from their side in a few minutes. So they'll pull this up and they'll see their job is that task. So they're going to have a task of a deliverable on here. So does that hopefully make sense? So you're adding them, you can't add them to the schedule till you add them to the team. Once you added them to the team, then they have visibility to the project. All right, so back to over here. All right, so the vendor is and this is for the vendor. So the vendor is going to be, oh, that was the client. I should have said the vendor. I went backwards. Same thing for the vendor. Did I already add Bart Simpson? Yeah. So the vendor is the one that needs to be uploading the deliverable, not the Ski Patrol Girl. How about I go back to this? Hello. So this is actually Bart Simpson. It needs to create the deliverable. So actually this job would be Bart's. So it's very easy. Either one, can be on here and you just save it. And now that job is for Bart. Usually what I would see for the client is probably more like the client would get review or whatever, and then the client would be the person that would be on here, and they don't even have to have a service. Ski Patrol Girl, they could just be on here as a job. So Ski Patrol Girl would show up when that plan started to review whatever item it is on there. All right, so got that backwards. All right, so on the vendor portal, like I said, he could have to review. The vendor may need to review. Typically, it's the client that needs to review, but you could have that, and they're clickable. So it will open whatever image that's on there and have them to review. At the top of the assigned tasks, of course, now that I finished, kind of just messed those up, but the assigned tasks are really just the service that they're going to be providing on the project and the task. And when they're done, all they can do is just press done and it will disappear. So there, done, task complete. That goes back to the project. When somebody that's a vendor completes one of these, it goes back to the project, marks that task complete. So that's how it won't put time to it. It just marks that task complete. So all their assigned tasks are in this top portion. You can close that up and then see all the active projects. Not necessary that like this is just how they actually open the project. So if they were on Purgatory and they have a job on here for Ski Hard or Die, if I want to actually look at these projects, I think it'd probably be easier for me to just type ski. There it is. So now these are clickable. So this is just where I get the job. This is, how do we send a vendor? Does the vendor have to be a contact for the client? No, the vendor does not have to be a contact for the client. There was a separate drop down, or in that drop down is just one says client contacts, and then the other one would be contacts, and they would just be considered a contact. Good question, Gail. But yes, they wouldn't be a client contact. They would just be a contact. All right, so down here is, so I remember I just said he has a job to do and it's into production. So you would click on this, and this is all the information, because based on what you decided to give them, like, do they, remember earlier I was like, do they need to see the budget? Maybe not, you know, like I should have unchecked that box. But this is here. They can see how far this project is. They can start a conversation because I said yes to that. They can see the file specs. Oh, which there are no specs on this one. I have to find one of the specs. Did I have files on this one? Yeah, they can see files. They can download the files. They can take that file and they can copy it or email it to someone. You know, they have options. Again, if there was deliverables on here and they need to see, there's not one on this particular project. And they can see that project team, and they could get everybody's email address if you want them to. Like, this is not necessary that you have to have them do all of this whatsoever. Earlier, not on this one, I have to find the one. Earlier I said you can't really have them do a to-do unless it's not really assigned to them. This one doesn't have one. I'm going to find a different one for you guys to look at. But ability to see all of this information is what is up to you from that area that we were just at previously. So again, they would be able to see all of this information based on what you guys want them to see. And so most likely they'll be just looking at what's my assignment, knowing what their assignment is, maybe digging down into the project. I think there was a different one that I had. Oh, here's a good thing to note. So when there's new conversations that they need to be notified of, they'll get an email, obviously, but you can also, oh, question, let me answer live. Answer live. Thank you for use contacts to drop down in the team section in my 5 years. Gail, 5 years. That's really great. You actually have outdone me. I've only been here 4 years. All right. But it's definitely a drop down in there. If you have problems getting to it, I will help you with that. So conversations, they'll get emails, but it's very nice that we have that ability to see, hey, I can reply, your vendor can have something that they need to reply to the post right here. They could subscribe to these posts, which they kind of already are because they're getting these posts. So they can see them right here. And once they read them, I think if you actually like click on it and then click out, I think it goes away. So that gives them more visibility. Now I was trying to see one that had specs on it, so you could see what it looks like. Does this have specs? A lot of stuff in, yeah. So specifications for the project, you can have whatever the spec. If you want them to be able to see some spec sheets, great. This is an approved spec sheet with whatever the information that from the creative, this one has a creative brief on it, but whatever the specs are, if you want them to see it, it will be held and they can see it just like you. And they could see multiple, you know, if you have multiple versions of a spec sheet, that's great. Again, we said the files are in there and the conversations are in here. So I think that pretty much they can see all projects for their company, like, or just the completed, you know, if I did that, there's going to be different things that, you know, show up based on what they have over here. Also, they have their own ability. You can give them access to calendars. There's nothing on this calendar. I'm going to show you from the client side. Usually you might have meetings with your client and they can go into their calendar and see the meetings and stuff like that. All right, let me break done on here. Sorry, just doing back end work over here to make sure this is clean. All right, any questions on the vendor side? Other questions? Okay, so the same thing, I'm going to hop out of this one because from your client side, here's your client portal. Same thing in the words because you only get one option. So that's why I did client/vendor, because they're both really signing into the same type portal. This is going to be more like your client might need to see that deliverable and make a decision on that deliverable. So deliverables, if you add them to your process, for your, you know how you have the internal review and client review, this is where it's going to show up when it's time for them. They'll also see it in the pen. They'll also get a pen. They'll also see it in the bell, pen, bell, same thing, right? They'll see that same thing here if they I don't know why you would go there when it's right here, but you could. It's going to be, what is this deliverable? And they'll be able to comment and do things. And quite honestly, I will let you guys know next month in October, these comments are going to be like live, or basically if somebody is making comments, you'll be able to see their comments at the same time. So that's a new feature that we'll be having. I forgot what it's called, but that's going to be coming up. Question again. Cindy, this is an odd question. We have a vendor that is set up as an employee mainly because we did not want to track that. We did want to track their time, but if we want to change them to a free account vendor, we would deactivate them as an employee and add them as a vendor. No, but they will be, no, they're, you're not going to deactivate. I will show you, Cindy. I think we can go into one of them. Is you should be able to switch them between a free user and a contracted employee at the same time. Okay, that's a really good question, actually. Before I keep going on to here, I'm actually going to go back over to kind of show you what I mean. So, oops, wrong page. Okay, Jen had too many pages open. Okay, what she is asking is she has an employee who's really a contractor who was adding time to the system, and now she wants to make him into a free user. Do I have a contractor in here? Well, we'll just say that Audrey Hepburn is going to be. So you want to keep all of this information for the employee, but you want to make them a free user as a contractor. So I believe, let's see if it's in here. You would mark them as a contractor and update that as of what date they became a contractor. Because they're, you might have some open time sheets or stuff that you still need to deal with on there. Then it is security controls. So is it in more? You're going to just convert them to a contact. And when you do that, let's do that. Are you sure you want to convert this employee to a contact? All of her projects stay with her, but now she, again, you've just moved her in one step. I know it sounds weird, but everything sticks with her. But now in the contact settings, you'll note under the, where we're at, security controls, you need to come over here and just mark her as a free login. All of her stuff still stays there, but now she's free. So hopefully that made sense. Might need to watch that again, but it's usually just 2 clicks of the button to like make them a contractor, make them a free user. And that's fine. And some people, other people turn them on and off, just so you know, for vendors and contractors, if you are using them as people that put time to projects and you want to just turn them on and off as you use them, you're prorated per day that you have them on. Question. Okay. Thanks. That was awesome. Good. All right. Answer live, done. All this weird stuff that you have to touch when you do a webinar. All right. So let me go back over to, we're almost done with this. Don't worry, guys. Looking at the actual ski patrol girl. So in her, she can have things to do. She can have tasks, just like you can assign them to a meeting. This is what I really want to show you. What's cool is I can invite my clients to a meeting and it shows up. Here's my webinar. Like if they say yes to it, they can see meetings. You can also go all the way down to, if you guys know how to do those traffic calendars, you can give them access to that traffic calendar resource one for just them as the client, so they can see due dates on their own calendar, right? So I didn't make any for this show, but you could have that on there. Again, they have deliverables. Now this one I think might be applicable. So clients, and then this is a whole nother webinar, can actually, maybe need to, if you guys formalize the process that they have project requests, they can come in and say, oh yeah, I want to do a project request and they need to get this folded brochure and they need this and they need this, and they can submit them after and when do they need it due by? And there's just evidently I had too many questions on here. So they can do it right from the portal, and I'm not going to take the time to, do all this, but they can submit it. And then what happens is they'll have this little area over here of the ones that were sent for approval. And then when it's approved by somebody, it will say approved. So they can have their kind of like little area to see all of that. Then another area that's important for clients is to see invoices. So I just had this old invoice in here. So they'd be able to actually get to their invoices. Of course, you would email them their invoices or however you guys print and send your invoices, but it's nice to be able to see all the invoices. If they had paid invoice, oh, they didn't pay nothing, bad. All right, but they'd be able to open these up just like the invoice that you actually sent them and see that invoice again. So that's a nice feature for them to see all the invoices in one area for them, for their client. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Oops, I don't know that I made any changes. So again, they could have things that they need to do. I need to review the images. They can get to the projects. They can see the conversations. It's up to you what they want to do. Great. They can see, they can reply if you want them to reply. And then again, they can see specs and stuff. Whoop, not in specs when there's none on there. And estimates is important, I think, for the clients, because you guys do most of the time make estimates. I didn't on that project. Oh, this one has estimates because it says multiple lane estimates. So if you want your clients to be able to see the estimates just like you would have sent them, you let them have access to that. We can limit to only showing open invoice. Ooh, Gail, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to go back in. She asked, can we limit it to only showing them open invoices? I think you can, but I need to go back over to that, hop over to this one. It's a good question because I'm not positive. Oops, let me go there. It was in, oh, I need to go, sorry, I don't want to be in this one. We're good, sorry, I'm going to check that for you right now while we're on here. Just, she is, can they see, just go to contact, ski patrol. And it was in the client portal, settings, client, and the invoice section was at the bottom. Show invoices, show closed invoices. So you don't want to show the closed ones, only the current invoices. So yes, you are correct. And well, you asked that question. So yes, you can decide for if they want to see just the open ones or the closed ones or both. Good question. Okay. So if you guys understand the, let me go back to, oh, I have two, I'm gonna close that out. I have too many different ones open. Okay, so you guys understand that they have as much access as you want to be able to see invoices, estimates, where are we at with this project? I can see where, you know, what percentage are we complete based on the task. So this really alleviates, why are we doing this? It alleviates you from having to, you know, field all this information when they can just gather this information themselves. Like, where are we at with this budget? What do we build? Blah, blah, blah. That's all up to you guys. Answer live, done. Sorry, cleaning out. And then the images and conversations. Okay, so the last part of this is, I just want to go over for just a couple seconds, minutes, is what if I don't really want to go through all this hassle and my clients really don't want to come into Workamajig and sign in to see this information? I get that. I get that all the time. Like, you need to be able to handhold your clients. They don't want to have to sign into another system to see stuff. They want to talk to you, blah, you know, they want you to do it for them. They don't want to be helping themselves, which is okay. So what can you do as a project manager to give them that information without them getting into our system? So this is I just have a couple minutes left, but I want to tell you, it's so underutilized that we have these things available for you. And let me go into one that actually has something. Let's see this one. All right, so does this one have an estimate? Okay, good. So you know how to give clients estimates, but what you may not know is you can, from here, you can give them print schedules. So I'm in the main part before I hit the schedule. You can give them options to see, and when you hit these, and you can even, if there was spec sheets, I should have picked one with spec sheets. Actually, I should pick one with spec sheets. Let me go with one multiple. Does have spec sheets? Makes more sense. No, maybe I should have added some spec sheets before this call. One more try. Nope, none of them. But if you had spec sheets, you could. So I just want to let you guys know, like, if you don't want to force your clients into using our system, you can still have options through here to kind of give them, you know, what is their project, who's the account, the kind of the pertinent information, and then see this information. Ooh, that's something new. What does that do? I don't really know. Okay, start dates, due dates. You can kind of set up what this is and you can email this over to them. That was my point. That's one way. So that's from this print here, which you, and if you had specs on there, you would be able to see those too and send the specs to the client. In addition, on the schedule, not many people know this either. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about is you can print a client schedule from going from the print key here, and you can decide what do you want them to see. And they can even have Gantt charts if they want. And then again, I can send this to the client as an update of here's where we're at. And we don't have to see a sign note like when is this due? What's our, your schedule may be a lot longer. I'm trying to keep it simple here, right? And some people tell me, let me find a different project real quick. This opportunity. Let me check the schedule. Is this bigger? Yeah, some people tell me they only want the client to see certain tasks, like the client does not need to see all of these tasks. So if you didn't know this, and most people don't, for whatever line I'm on, when you open this over here and you go to the pen, you have the opportunity to go. So we're on the task cost analysis assessment, and I want to send something to my client, but I don't want him to see this. I think it's the other key. You just hit hide from client. So I could go through this whole schedule and decide what things I want to hide from my schedule, hide from the clients. And if you click this, it's still on the schedule. It's just not going to be when I click to print cost analysis assessment and I print the client schedule, and we'll just do start dates so you can see the difference. It should not have that. It's missing from the steps on here. So I didn't want them to see certain ones and I only wanted them to see, say I only wanted them to see the summary task. In fact, that's most likely what most clients are going to be like. I just want them to see these different stages and they don't need to see this little other parts. I just come through here, go to the other and hide it on all the ones except for the, the top level. So that's another way you can do that. And again, that's through the print here to give to the client or print here to give to the client. And if you're older like me, you want to have print with larger font. And then again, so you can mess with these things and see, look how nice and big that is for old eyes like mine. You can see that on here and it looks pretty good. And it always can download and send it to your client with some additional paperwork. All right, so I think that's all I have. Questions? Any more questions? I've got a few minutes to answer any questions about vendor setup, client setup, security rights, anything like that. Otherwise, you guys are welcome to leave. And if you have additional questions after this and you want to get together and do a call, do the training at workamajig.com and they will set up a time for you guys to go over this for your particular situation to get your people set up correctly. It's a great for people to use, but again, it's not for every client is not going to want. I would take a few tests. If you're just going to set this up the first, your clients better than me. I'd set up a few clients to try it and see how they like it, not like roll it out and make all clients use it or anything like that. I've just set it up for those particular clients that are that really need it. But thank you very much for your time. I don't see any questions coming through here, and have a good day. Bye-bye.